This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
The opinions, thoughts, and observations on the IRS Solution Attorney radio show are not legal advice. Facts and circumstances differ in every case. Do not take anything said on the show as legal or accounting advice. Always consult your lawyer or accountant before deciding how to handle any legal issue.
Welcome to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. If you have problems with the IRS, don't focus on the negative, focus on the solutions. With the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish. For over 15 years, he's been helping taxpayers with IRS problems reclaim their lives and their financial stability. Now, here's your host of the IRS Solution Attorney Show, Darrin T. Mish.
Hello, hello, hello. This is your IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish. I'm joined today with my co-host, Katrina Madewell.
That's me. Welcome to the show.
How you doing today?
Doing great. Went
awesome.
To the Outlet Mall opening this morning. Left right before the traffic got too mad.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a traffic
debacle
dream for a while.
It's okay, though. At least the shopping's not so far, right?
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there is an outlet mall opening in Wesley Chapel, Florida, where Katrina and I spend a lot of time. It's just outside, just north of Tampa. In fact, it's called the Tampa Outlet Mall, isn't it? And
Tampa Premium Outlet.
Oh, yeah, you gotta get that word premium in there. Looks like it's going to be pretty neat. I think there's a big room where they're going to put a Cabela's in there. And
well, they're putting all kinds of stuff. They got a lot of stuff going on this weekend, including like fireworks and all kinds of stuff.
Fantastic. You won't be able to get within 5 miles of the place, but
that's all right.
It's all good. So
they gave away chairs, like baseball sitting chairs, I think for a reson, like you're parked.
Oh, wow.
I'm just saying.
So
the topic for today's show.
So we're going to continue in a pattern that we've been going through the last several weeks, where we're going to just talk about, how people feel when they have problems, IRS problems, and some of the traps that they fall into and things like that. Because the longer I do this type of work and the longer that I'm a lawyer, I realize that the administrative or nuts and bolts, the mechanical ways that we solve the problems aren't as important as the way that people feel before, after, and during their representation or in the handling of their problems. We're all kind of the maker of our own problems, whether we want to admit it or not. I mean, almost every one of our problems, and this is hard to hear, I'm sure, but almost every one of our problems traces back to a decision or decisions that we've made or failed to make. You ever think about the fact that the failure to make a decision is in fact a decision? Yep. You decide, hey, I'm just not going to decide on that, and that means I'm going to do nothing, which is in fact a decision. So what caused me to think about that was earlier this week I was speaking with a new client, and he was really down in the dumps regarding what was going on with his IRS case. And I was confused because we have a great sort of proposition, solution laid out for him. It's just a process at this point. This stuff isn't even hard. We talk about that in our practice all the time among the staff about how what we do isn't even hard. It's just the process. You just got to work the process. You got to apply the process to the facts, and good stuff comes out of the end. It kind of reminds me of the Willy Wonka movie where they put stuff in the front end of the candy machine and magic came out of the end. Hopefully nobody rises to the top and gets chopped into pieces, but with the bubble machine. But anyway, I
digress. You never know. It's in the realm of possibility.
So I was a little bit worried that he seemed to be so unhappy because, happier people are nicer to be around. You just naturally work harder for them. It just seems like happier clients get better results. They're more cooperative.
What's the attitude of gratitude? For me, I'd rather walk 10 extra miles for somebody that's grateful than someone that never even said thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Because, as an attorney, I take an oath to do my absolute best for all clients, and I do, even the grouchy ones. But you can't help being human, A lot of people like to joke that lawyers aren't human and whatnot. But if somebody's always grouchy and always tearing your head off every time you talk to them, naturally, they're just not going to get as good a result. It's probably not going to have anything to do with me. It's just going to be the way it is. It's just a karma thing. So I was worried that he wasn't that happy, and so I took a look at what was going on with his situation, and because he had indicated to me previously that he was concerned that his IRS problem wasn't being fixed fast enough and all that. And so I looked and I noticed that he actually hadn't submitted any of his documentation to us. And
well, we talked about this. Like, what's being submitted fast enough anyway? It's not really a fast process, is it?
well, no, it's not a fast process, but
I mean, we talked about this before on another show, and if my memory serves me correctly, you're looking at 12 to 24 plus months, right, to resolve it? Isn't that right?
That
like
brings
the
to
norm?
mind a different client who hired us in June of 2014, and we got to do about 6 years worth of tax returns. And finally, I pushed the issue here in October of 2015. We got the tax returns done, and he's unhappy because it took so long. And it's like, yeah, but you provided us zero information with which to prepare your tax returns. So I was waiting for the bare minimum cooperation so that we could get your tax returns done.
Did he think that you were going to do like a power of attorney or something and like get all of his stuff?
Well, we do a power of attorney, and we
I know,
did
but was
get
that what he was thinking?
No, I don't know exactly what he was thinking, but this is not, I'm not criticizing that client. This is very common. You get trapped in these circles of sort of nonsense where people are often trapped where they don't know what to do because they're scared or whatever, and so they just go around in circles and just spin and do nothing. And so it's up to us as the law firm to try to break them out of that and provide solutions, that we know about that might help them get out of that cycle.
Okay, specifically, like I need this bank statement. Like you're giving them a very detailed list. That helps, right? The bullet points, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny too now that, I mean, you and I know that the printing out of a bank statement takes, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 clicks on a computer, and maybe you print it, maybe you don't, maybe you just
you
save
tell
it.
them, look, come in, log into your bank account, we're going to print these, we're going to be like done.
Well, it always is shocking about how long it takes people to provide bank statements in today's day and age. I mean, literally, I've timed myself. It takes 15 seconds.
Yeah, it's not long. It takes you longer to log in than it does to pull them.
Yeah, so anyway, so I was worried about this guy. We found out that he hadn't provided his paperwork. We had a little discussion about how he needed to cooperate so that we could get to his end goal, which was, light at the end of the tunnel, the proverbial rainbow and all that kind of thing. And he's a lot happier. So it got me to thinking about, some stuff I wanted to talk about today. And that sure was a long intro, wasn't it?
That's all right. It works.
But
sometimes that's what it's about, right? Like all these little nuts and bolts that go into it.
We're all prone to, being discouraged about things from time to time. There's really no getting around that. But, how much of that desperation stems from impatience? We get impatient to have it what it is that we want, and that's kind of part of the problem.
I'd say it's probably, in your case, more anxious, don't you think? As opposed to impatient, they're probably anxious because this is a lot of anxiety around this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's tons of anxiety wrapped around it, and a lot of times that anxiety is just paralyzing to people. And the best thing I could say is you just have to be brave. We all go through things in life. If you're middle-aged or above and you haven't gone through a life crisis where you thought the whole world was going to come tumbling down, if you haven't been through that, just buckle up because it's coming. I mean, it doesn't
Suck it up, roll up your sleeves, put on your big girl panties, whatever it takes to just get your stuff in order.
And some of us have been through that multiple times, But the great thing about that is very few people die from these kind of things that they think are going to be the end of the world, I mean, you could have a terminal illness or something like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a financial crisis. We're talking about
it's not going to kill you.
A divorce, which I'm sure is quite traumatic. We're talking about these things that can be dealt with. You just have to face it and deal with it. And, so the other thing is that people fall into depression when they know what the problem is and they aren't actually taking any action to solve the problem. And I can talk about this from firsthand knowledge. Even within the past few years, I'd had problems that I knew I had. I even knew how to solve them, but I was unwilling to do the work to solve those problems. And so we have to think about that just as human beings. We have to think about, okay, I feel depressed about this problem I'm having in my life. Now, why am I feeling depressed about it? What is the deal? Is it because I literally don't know what to do? or is it because I know what to do and I'm just not willing to put in the work to do it? And I think that that's something that's really important.
And even go further, like, why is that? Are you scared of the outcome? Because sometimes that might be what paralyzes people, don't you think?
Yeah, there's a great book. I wish I could remember the name. It was written by the bald guy that did the Future Weapons show. He was a former Navy SEALs. His last name was like Makowitz or something like that. And he talks about how even the Navy SEALs, who in the last decade have really become, modern day American heroes, right? We kind of imagine these guys jump out of airplanes, swim underwater, blow things up, kill people silently, and are never afraid. But he actually talks about in the book quite a bit about how those guys are scared like every moment that they're on a mission. And what they've learned how to do is just channel that fear into positive action and momentum. And I think there's there's a life lesson to be learned there. I mean, we all have times in our life when we're actually almost paralyzed by fear, but you got to just figure out what your goal is and then just keep pushing through the goal so that you can finish your mission, which is to accomplish your goal. So,
well, when you think about that too, you're like, who doesn't want to be happy, And if you can just focus on the end result, a lot of times that'll get you where you want to go. It's, what can I do right now to make it to where I need to be tomorrow?
I don't think we've ever talked about this on the show, but one of the things that I've done many, many times in my life, in my adult life, is I've written down goals, and I've always written down big, hairy, audacious, crazy goals. Just write them down on a piece of paper. Make 5 of them or 10 of them, and do some goals in every area of your life. Physical, financial,
that
professional.
Life wheel.
Yeah. Write those things down, and every time I've done this, I've put the goal, like some people would preach, read those goals every day. And I think that would be a very good practice. But what I've done is I've written them down, and I've put the piece of paper in a desk drawer or something and forgot all about it. All conscious thought is gone and removed from the goals. And then I'll find that list of goals 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, and I look at the goals and I'm like, wow. I didn't just accomplish all those goals. I smashed those crazy, big, audacious goals. So
it's a proven stat, though, just the time to think about it and write it out. Even if you throw it in a drawer, like you were saying, you're thinking about it, you're talking about it. What you talk about, you bring about. So even if you throw that into the drawer, it still finds its way into the atmosphere.
Yeah, it finds its way into your psyche if you're a motivated person. Now, if you're the kind of person who is going to write down some big, hairy, audacious goals, like I want to make $10 million a second, and then you never take any conscious steps to make that happen, that's not going to work.
I mean, it's as simple as I'm going to walk 10 miles, or I need to go 10 miles, right, from point A to point B. And yeah, might be a big goal, but how are you going to get there, right? Are you going to take a train? Are you going to walk? Are you going to drive? Are you going to ride a bike? There's a lot of ways to get there. Some are faster than others. But the point is you have to start moving in that direction. Yeah, if you don't move in that direction, you're never going to get there.
Right. So applying this to if you had an IRS problem, let's say you owe $100,000 to the IRS and you haven't filed a tax return in the last 6 years. Well, then you need to write down a goal that I want to somehow get my IRS problem settled. And then you have to start trying to chunk down the steps that you need to take to get that done. Now, if you don't know how to solve the problem, and I wouldn't expect you to, Katrina, what do you think some of the chunking down would look like to solve that problem?
Not doing anything. Frozen.
Well, no.
That's what I would think. They don't know. If you don't know how to chunk that down, you've never been taught that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is you might want to go ahead and just think about, okay, so maybe I should do a little Google research on how to solve an IRS problem. Maybe I should find out how I can get old tax returns done if I don't have any records. Maybe I should try to find out maybe some people who had either been in this problem before or have handled these kinds of problems before. So my point in explaining this is not that you have to learn how to solve the problem, but you have to figure out one small little chunky step to getting to that goal. And lots of times I've written down goals and I really have no idea how I'm going to get, what it is I want. But if you just try to take a step regularly in that direction, somehow that all seems to work out.
You have to listen to my Saturday show. It's all about that. You're going to love it.
So tell us a little bit about that show.
So not to take away, but the guy's name is Joshua Smith. He was listed as NAR, which is National Association of Realtors, 30 under 30. Really hard to make that cut. And he has this company called GSD Mode, and GSD stands for Getting S with an It Done mode. And he is like hardcore, like goal driven, like he's one of the people that you talk to and you feel motivated and exhausted after you talk to him.
Awesome. So I think it's time for a break. When we come back, we'll talk about a little bit more about how to get those goals accomplished if you have an IRS problem or really any other problem you're dealing with in life.
Breaking rocks in a hot sun. I fall for law in a low one. I fall for law in a low one. I needed money gone.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Curious what your Tampa home is worth? Here's an easy way to find out what homes like yours are selling for in today's market. Text the word value to 813-377-2775 for a free report on Tampa house prices. We'll send you a free report with up-to-the-minute statistics based on all homes for sale sold in your neighborhood over the last 6 months in all price ranges. To get your free report on Tampa Bay house prices, just call or text the word value to 813-377-2775.
Are you suffering from IRS problems? Do you owe back taxes you can't pay? Is your paycheck or bank account being levied? Or maybe you haven't filed tax returns in years and simply don't know what to do. This is Darrin T. Mish to tell you that if you're tired of IRS problems hanging over your head and are ready for a fresh start, we may be able to help. Call the law offices of Darrin T. Mish at 888-GET-MISH, 888-GET-MISH. I can help you file old tax returns, work to release tax liens or stop wage levies, even negotiate deals to pay off back taxes at a discount, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. Hey, let's face it, these days it's not hard to get into tax trouble. A divorce, failed business, health problems, you name it. The point is, IRS problems may be solved if you're willing to take the first step. Call for a free consultation at 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Or go to the web at getirshelp.com, because the one sure thing is, IRS problems don't solve themselves. So get Mish. 888-438-6474. Principal Office, Tampa.
Ask me about an inside secret to save several hundreds of dollars on your annual homeowner's insurance premium. Text the word WIND, W-I-N-D, to 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. Hi, I'm Katrina Madewell, host of Tampa Home Talk. I'm going to give you market-appropriate, timely information regarding homeownership matters, because we want to make your everyday life better. Wherever you are in life, it's our mission to bring you good advice so you can maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. My team and I are passionate about it. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Tampa Home Talk on WTAN every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I'm your host, Darrin T. Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Welcome back to the show.
So right before the break, we were talking about goals and, you know, how to solve problems in life and accomplish things in life by the use of goals. And I think it's really important to just note that, you know, if you don't write down a goal, if you don't have any goals, you're just going to go through life you're going to let life happen to you. So there's something magic about writing your goals down. So if you have an IRS problem, maybe the goal looks like, I'll have my IRS problem completely settled by some date in the future. And then you just have to take regular daily action steps to try to make that happen. You just have to move in the right direction. You just have to move in a positive direction. And maybe one of those action steps is to call me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's to call the IRS.
Maybe it's to take 15 minutes and search Google for something.
Yeah, maybe it's to do a Google search and get a little bit of research. Maybe the solution or the next action step is to buy a $12 book on Amazon. Or maybe it's to go on Amazon and get some of my free stuff. Or go on my YouTube channel and watch, you know, I've heard people say they watch 4 or 5 hours of me explaining how to solve IRS problems, which sounds like a nightmare to me.
You're going, man, I couldn't watch 4 or 5 hours of that.
But maybe that's the action step. Maybe it's just getting comfortable with maybe the outline of how you're going to solve your problem. And what we're talking about really applies to all of life's challenges, and we all have challenges, whether they're from how to pay the rent, how to pay the power bill, how to get your kid into that college of their choice, whatever it is. We all have challenges, but if you don't make goals and if you're not goal oriented, then you're most likely not going to achieve what you want out of life. That's really all we kind of have to say. I mean, that's the topic of the show today, is just make some goals. Don't let life happen to you. If you're depressed, it's probably because you're not moving in the direction of goals that you haven't even stated yet.
I like that, though, just taking those simple little action steps to get you moving in that direction.
Yeah, if you do take coordinated action, small steps towards a stated goal, in no time you're going to be so much farther along than you ever could have imagined. And this doesn't sound like rocket science to me, but if you've never experienced this is pretty profound stuff.
And it might be that the person listening hasn't.
Yeah, it probably is. And I hope there's at least one person, that's listening that really takes that to heart and sets some goals to solve some of the challenges that they have in their life, the things that are really keeping them down, and they take some small action steps to make things happen, because it's worked. It's a time proven throughout the decades, throughout centuries that works. So I think we have some questions from listeners that we need to answer, Katrina.
Yes. Let me read those. I'm looking. So let me back up. I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. So number one, the first question we got was, wait a minute.
I think I have it here.
Do I have the wrong?
I have it. It says, John wrote in on Twitter, and he asked, most of the money I earn comes in from ACH payments from clients. Those are like the automatic, check, debit kind of deals. Should I be worried that these can be garnished or levied because of my back taxes that I owe? Will the IRS contact my clients or just garnish the money from my bank account? Wow. There's a lot of stuff going on in that question. Well, if John owes a significant amount of money to the IRS and the IRS has issued him, meaning sent him, a certified letter called a final notice of intent to levy, nowadays that letter is going to say LT11 in the upper right-hand corner. They used to be letter 1058. For decades it was letter 1058 and it had a certain format, and in just the last year or so they decided to change the headline on the letter, change the letter number, change the verbiage, change the format, and basically disguise it from us so that we didn't automatically file appeals when these things came in.
I was going to say, what's that all about? But that sounds like you just answered that question.
Yeah, it's just to keep us from filing so many appeals, because appeals cost the IRS more money to resolve than, doing nothing. So I think that's what that's
probably
about.
Want to work out those details.
So if John had gotten a final notice of intent to levy and he didn't file an appeal and more than 30 days have gone by, he's subject to potential levies. Now, what's a levy mean? You just got to think about the fact that levy means seizure. Okay, so anytime you see the word levy, it means potentially the IRS could seize your stuff.
Take.
Yeah, take. Yeah, they're both four-letter words, right?
Yep.
Levy and take.
Okay, take
so.
it.
So they could levy his bank account. So if they levy his bank account, what does that mean? Well, if they levy the bank account, the bank has to take the money that's in the account on the day that the levy is processed. They have to hold it for 21 days and then turn it over to the IRS. So if the IRS gets really lucky, and I've got lots of stories where, clients had 40 grand in the bank or whatever, and the IRS just got really lucky, they get the money, unless you can convince them during that 21 days to give it back.
And this is a one-day thing.
This is a one-day thing.
Swoop.
Bank levies are one-time things. That doesn't mean they can only occur one time. It just means they're not continuous, and they're not supposed to be successive. So it's not supposed to be where the IRS issues a levy and then they issue another one in a week, and let's say they always issued it on the first of the month. That would be a successive levy. It would also be a punitive levy. So the IRS is not supposed to do successive levies for bank accounts, and they're not ever supposed to do a punitive levy. What's punitive mean?
Yes, you're getting all legal on us.
Punitive means
it
shouldn't be punishing. The IRS's role is not to punish transgressors.
Somehow I have a feeling that the general population does not believe that to be true.
Okay, I'm not saying it is true or not true. I'm just saying they're not supposed to issue punitive levies. I'm not saying I've never seen a punitive levy. I have seen some punitive stuff. But remember, the executive branch, going back to high school civics, right? We have three branches of government, right? The executive, legislative, and the judicial, okay? Executive branch's job, within the IRS is part of the executive branch. Their job is to enforce and carry out the laws that are passed by the legislative branch, okay? Now, if there is a violation of these laws, then the executive branch then gives way to the judicial branch, who does the punitive stuff, who punishes the bad behavior. A lot of times the IRS gets ahead of itself and sort of jumps straight to that punishment part, and that's not really what they're supposed to do. So John could be worried about a bank levy, and I think that could be a very real possibility for him. But even worse is typically a revenue officer, who is a person who works at the IRS, who handles individual cases. He's basically a bill collector on steroids. A revenue officer can issue a levy to the source of revenue for any business. So let me give you a real estate agent context.
What does that mean exactly?
Let me give you a real estate agent context so that you can kind of get it, because it's really common. I was thinking about this yesterday. Real estate agents are my single largest profession that I represent. It's just the way you guys get paid and the way the way the industry is. But what they would do to a real estate taxpayer is they would issue a levy to the broker, directing broker, hey broker, all monies that you owe real estate agent, give them to us until she's paid. I mean, this is very harsh, right? So what are you supposed to do in that case? Really, that a levy like that is not so much about collecting the money. That kind of levy is about getting your attention so that you come in out of the cold and you start to deal with the problem. Going back to the thing we were talking about in the last segment, right?
And how does that relate to John as well? When he gets payments by ACH, like how do they... what did you say again? The revenue officer
can issue a levy to the source of the to the payors.
So would that be like to all the payers? Would they be the bank?
One of the things that can happen is if the revenue officer gets a copy of all the accounts receivable, then he can actually issue levies to all of the people that pay a particular business. Let's say John had a lawn care business, and somehow the revenue officer got a list of all the customers. And he sent all the customers a levy notice saying, hey, instead of paying your monthly lawn care bill to John, just pay it to us until we tell you to stop.
And how real is that really happens? Like, how often do you see that? Because that seems like it would be a lot of work for the IRS.
This is an advanced thing. I mean, it doesn't happen to your typical person who hasn't heard from the IRS. This is going to happen to a person that's been dealing with a revenue officer, and the revenue officer is either super aggressive or the taxpayer hasn't been very cooperative with the revenue officer. But I've seen it many, many times. What happens in these cases is kind of interesting, and it's what I would have predicted if I didn't have any experience in this area, and that is the payors simply don't pay.
Yeah.
They don't pay the IRS.
Well, think about that.
They don't pay the business. They just stop paying.
Think about that. Your lawn guy, Joe Smith, who might have been your lawn guy for 5 years, and then all of a sudden you get this letter from the IRS, and you're going, what? I don't owe the IRS, and don't pay Joe Smith, and you'd be like, I would think that was a scam. Like, first thing, I'd be like, what the heck is this?
Now, I'm in this business, and I've been doing it for over 15 years, right? So if my lawn guy, if I got a levy notice that said, don't pay your lawn guy, pay the IRS, I just get a new lawn service. Honestly.
Why? He's a client, Darrin. You should call him and help him. What's the matter with you? I got to retrain you, don't I?
If he was my client, obviously, I would take care of that. But
that's the point. He's your lawn guy, and now he's going to be your client if you got that notice.
The funny thing is, I think my lawn guy actually does have an IRS problem, but he's one of these people that's not going to deal with it until it happens. But hopefully nobody can figure out who does my lawn. But anyway, maybe he's gotten it fixed.
I finally found the Twitter questions.
Okay, good for you.
We got another one from Lisa. She says, is it possible to stop garnishments being made by the state of Florida for money I owe them for taxes?
This is a really interesting question because, we don't have an income tax in Florida. So the only kind of taxes that you can owe the state of Florida are probably either corporate income taxes or sales taxes.
Or child support, right? Wouldn't that be the state or no?
I don't think... No, it's not a tax. So I'm not going to read that as a child support. But they're saying
garnishment. I'm trying to figure this out.
So short answer, yes. There's going to be a way to stop any garnishment if you can demonstrate that it's causing an economic hardship, which means you can't afford to pay for life's necessities like food, clothing, shelter, medical care, transportation, education, things like that. Then you're going to be able to get a garnishment stopped. I don't know enough about the facts and the details in Lisa's case, but it's probably going to start with either finding a lawyer to help you with that or simply calling the state of Florida and talking to the person in charge of your particular case and explaining to them that you, in lieu of a garnishment, you would much rather work out some acceptable payment plan so that you would not have an economic hardship in your life.
And if you have questions, try to send some more details so that we can actually answer those in detail, not these little one-liners, because they're a little hard to answer, right, Darrin?
Yeah, for sure.
So the Twitter handle, real quick, in case, and you can follow on direct message.
It's Darrin_Mish. That's DARRIN_MISH.
Or 888-GET-MISH.
888-GET-MISH.
We'll be back in a minute.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Curious what your Tampa home is worth? Here's an easy way to find out what homes like yours are selling for in today's market. Text the word value to 813-377-2775 for a free report on Tampa house prices. We'll send you a free report with up-to-the-minute statistics based on all homes for sale sold in your neighborhood over the last 6 months in all price ranges. To get your free report on Tampa Bay house prices, just call or text the word value to 813-377-2775.
Are you suffering from IRS problems? Do you owe back taxes you can't pay? Is your paycheck or bank account being levied? Or maybe you haven't filed tax returns in years and simply don't know what to do. This is Darrin T. Mish to tell you that if you're tired of IRS problems hanging over your head and are ready for a fresh start, we may be able to help. Call the law offices of Darrin T. Mish at 888-GET-MISH, 888-GET-MISH. I can help you file old tax returns, work to release tax liens or stop wage levies, even negotiate deals to pay off back taxes at a discount, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. Hey, let's face it, these days it's not hard to get into tax trouble. A divorce, failed business, health problems, you name it. The point is, IRS problems may be solved if you're willing to take the first step. Call for a free consultation at 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Or go to the web at getirshelp.com, because the one sure thing is, IRS problems don't solve themselves. So get Mish. 888-438-6474. Principal Office, Tampa.
Ask me about an inside secret to save several hundreds of dollars on your annual homeowner's insurance premium. Text the word WIND, W-I-N-D, to 813-377-2775. Again, 813-377-2775. Hi, I'm Katrina Madewell, host of Tampa Home Talk. I'm going to give you market-appropriate, timely information regarding homeownership matters, because we want to make your everyday life better. Wherever you are in life, it's our mission to bring you good advice so you can maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. My team and I are passionate about it. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Tampa Home Talk on WTAN every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome back. I'm Darrin T. Mish, your IRS Solution Attorney.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Welcome back to the show. So we have another question before we dive into the next segment.
All right, awesome.
So Clarence had another question. I think this one came from Facebook. He says, I'm unsure where to get the federal tax forms I need. Is the post office still the best place to get them? That's a pretty good basic question. I like it.
So unfortunately, I find myself in a post office several times a week, usually standing in a line.
So people can still pick up tax forms in the post office?
No, actually, there's in most post offices there are no tax forms there, and you can't get them at the library. That's the other place we used to get them back in the old days, right? The best place to get federal tax forms is actually on the web at irs.gov. They don't do a lot right, and the government's already demonstrated that they don't know how to build very good websites based upon the medical exchanges. But I'm going to compliment the government here real quick. They actually built a decent website for the IRS. The forms are on there. Old years forms are on there. Now, if you're in a situation where you don't have internet access, you don't have a computer, and you don't have a printer or any variation thereof, it's going to be kind of challenging, and you might have to go into an IRS local office. Unfortunately, I find myself in those relatively frequently too, And there are some tax forms at the IRS local offices. In the Tampa Bay area, there's 2. There's actually more than 2 if you count, Polk County.
Where are their offices? Because there used to be one by International Mall, but I don't think that's still there.
In Tampa, there's one on Columbus Drive near the intersection of Columbus and Del Mabry.
So that is still there.
Kind of kitty corner to the Raymond James Stadium,
yeah,
sort
there's a
of.
church or something right there, too, I think.
Ironically, some of our Tampa listeners who've been here for a while will think that this is kind of funny. Joe Redner actually owns the IRS building. Joe Redner is a firebrand libertarian who happens to also own most of the adult entertainment establishments in the area, and really became famous in the 90s because he did a public access show that involved people without clothes on. And he kept fighting the government to allow that to occur, and guy won every time he got into a fight with the government. So I have to.
He went to jail a lot in between too, but
I admire some of the stances that he's taken just from the standpoint of a very strong libertarian, and I think it's ironic. He must smile every month when he sees that rent money go into the.
I went to school with his son. I don't know if I told you that.
Is that right?
Yeah. Since probably 8th grade.
No, I haven't heard anything about Joe Redner in a long time, and he may have even passed away. I'm not really sure.
No, he's still around.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Okay. So good for him.
He's still around. He's helping his son Joey with Cigar City Brewing.
Okay, so and Joe is kind of, for those of you listening who are outside of the area, Joe is kind of like at the Tampa Bay Hugh Hefner.
Yes.
Right?
He's a Tampa icon for sure.
So anyway, so there's an office there.
That's a great way to put that. I'm going to have to let Joey know that. She'll love that.
And there is an IRS office in St. Petersburg on Koger Boulevard, which is off of 4th Street North, very close to the intersection of Gandy and 4th Street.
It's like St. Pete area.
Yeah, St. Pete area. There's an office over there. And I know there's one in Lakeland. I've never been to it. And I know there's one in Sarasota as well. So there's IRS offices all over the place. Somebody asked me just yesterday, they said something about, they told me a story. I went to the IRS local office and they couldn't help me. And I kind of smiled and I said, yeah, the IRS sometimes is kind of like dealing with the Alice in Wonderland story. They will routinely put out press releases that say something like, in the interest of providing better customer service, we're closing our local service area so that you can call the toll-free number and get assistance.
Yeah, we've had to send people to the IRS to actually get their taxes stamped, during the loan process. That's happened. And that's fun because most of the time they don't want to help them. And, we have to send people and they're literally crying this whole sob story to get them just to put a simple stamp and an initial on it.
Yeah, back in the day, we would send them to the IRS local offices and have those things date stamped so that they could show as received. They're not that willing to do that anymore. So that's sort of an interesting thing. The other place that you can get them, for the people that don't have the computer, the internet, the printer, whatever, you can actually call the IRS at 1-800-829-1040 and ask them, and they will send you quite willingly any forms that you need, because it's going to facilitate getting tax revenue, right? So
you got some good stories in the news. This one's an interesting one. I don't know how much you know about it, but it says the IRS possessed Stingray cell phone surveillance gear, documents reveal. What the heck is that?
This is a frightening story.
That's what I'm reading.
So Stingray cell phone surveillance gear it's a situation where law enforcement sets up basically fake cell towers. And so your phone, depending on the network that you're on and whatnot, your phone will actually hit that Stingray tower and use it like it's a cell tower. And what law enforcement is supposed to use these things for is they're supposed to simply strip metadata out of the phone so that they can identify when potentially a drug suspect or a terrorism suspect or whatnot is in a certain area, and they can prove that he was in that area. They're not supposed to use this technology to listen to phone calls, and the reason is that they only need something called a low-level court order. It's called a pen register to go ahead and use these Stingray towers in the manner that I just described, where they're just sort of verifying that a person is in the area. And the reason they need these very low-level sort of warrants is because it's not that intrusive. That's the thought behind it, okay? But what the IRS is doing, and lots of other federal law enforcement is doing, is literally on some of the hardware that they use at the law enforcement end, all they have to do to listen to the phone call is plug in a headphone jack. So,
Isn't that a violation in some sort?
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's a trackable violation. And also, very
They're
interesting.
listening, not recording, is what you're saying?
Well, I don't. Who
They're
knows?
probably recording too, but
Who knows? But what federal law enforcement has told local law enforcement, who are also using these things, is that if local law enforcement is in danger of the use of these devices is about to be uncovered, like in a courtroom or through discovery or whatnot, that local law enforcement is to basically not cooperate, not use the information, and basically
bail out of it.
Yeah, hit the ejection, button, and just bail out.
Blow up that black box quick. Nobody's talking.
And so, the IRS. Don't you think it's interesting and sort of questionable why the IRS would even need these things? I mean, there is a criminal investigative division at the IRS, and there's 2,000 or 3,000 agents, but it just the intrusiveness of the government post 9/11, and post Patriot Act. When the Patriot Act was passed in probably 2012 as a response to 9/11.
Exactly, it was.
And I can remember reading the news and seeing that this thing was being proposed and saying to my wife, "This is terrible. There's going to be this tremendous pendulum swing away from individual liberty in our country under the guise of, well, we need this to fight terrorism." Now, how in the world is the IRS using these Stingray towers to fight terrorism? It's so tempting once you give law enforcement a tool to only use it for its intended purpose. And I'm not anti-law enforcement, but law enforcement a lot of times looks at situations like an us versus them mentality, and they'll do whatever it takes to get the bad guys. And that's not what our system is based upon. Our system is based upon checks and balances, the rule of law, strong. We should still have strong individual freedoms in this country, and it seems like we keep going down this road of collectivism and what's best for the common good. And those sound like really nice things until you realize that if our republic is being run like a pure democracy, meaning that if the majority rules, individual rights will necessarily suffer.
We move away from individual liberties and move a little bit more into the communist space, really. I mean, if someone else is regulating what's being done and said, and
not to get too far down into this rabbit hole, but the colonies are the British colonies that made up America later were founded by people fleeing Europe, Britain in particular, because they were seeking more individual religious freedom primarily. They were, the Pilgrims were a religious sect that was being persecuted in Britain, and so they split. And they left to the New World because they knew that there wouldn't be people persecuting them for their beliefs. And it's kind of scary that we've gotten to this point in American society where it's all secular humanism. It's like what the left actually thinks is right is what we're kind of living under right now.
Well, the problem is we've been so free and people have the right to say anything that people take it so far left that they lose sight of the original goal and the original agenda and how our whole country was started.
I talk about this all the time. I mean, individual responsibility is really the key to, success. And at the beginning of the show, I talked about all of our problems are caused by decisions that we've made or haven't made. You can't even solve the problem if you're still pointing the finger at somebody else. I mean, maybe somebody else contributed to the problem, okay? Granted, there's usually more than one person that causes or contributes to a problem. But until you take that personal responsibility that, okay, maybe even if I didn't solve it, then I'm gonna solve it now. I'm gonna take the steps that I need to now to get that thing solved. So, it's just scary that the IRS is using these Stingray things. There probably will be another congressional investigation. It probably will go nowhere.
Well, I think there's a lot of stuff we don't know, but that's another whole story for a different day.
The Justice Department doesn't seem to prosecute for anything anymore.
So David Parker out of Virginia Beach, he is an owner. He pleads guilty to over $1 million in tax evasion. He pleaded guilty on Thursday for evading income tax assessment and payments.
So we talk on the show a lot about how
49-year-old guy.
people with tax problems are often worried about going to prison. It's one of their biggest fears, and it makes sense. You know, if you haven't filed tax returns, it makes sense that you're scared because you're breaking the law, and you know that there's potential for people to go to prison. And this is one of those stories that the IRS,
that's 8 years starting back.
You know, the IRS decided to pop this guy. I guess he was an owner of a jet ski kind of business in Virginia, and they decided to pop this guy because it made the news. I mean, we're reading this, you know, off a website up in the Virginia area, and it's made the news. And the reason that it's in the news is because it's going to scare X number of people into compliance and getting taken care of their tax problems. I mean, we're talking about this on a national radio show here, and people are going to hear about it, and they're going to get scared, and they're going to do what they need to do. But this guy, it was really pretty funny. He didn't file federal tax returns from 2007 to 2011. In and of itself, not that unusual. But he also didn't file his business income tax returns after 2007.
He just didn't file at all.
The combined tax bill is over $1 million. Now, here's what he did that was probably really got him popped. He met with an IRS agent in February 2012 and failed to disclose all of his assets while indicating to the IRS that he had very little money. Then a few weeks after that meeting, he goes to casinos in Florida and Atlantic City, and he buys $50,000 in chips. And he gets caught. So it's not so much the failure to file the tax returns, in my opinion, that caused him to be prosecuted. It was the lie.
Well, it's the fact that he owes the IRS $1 million and he just spent $50,000 on casino chips. I probably didn't like that very much.
I actually don't have a gigantic problem with that. But he shouldn't. The
IRS liked it very
much.
He
shouldn't have told the lie to the IRS, because what he did is he probably motivated a fairly typically unmotivated IRS employee. He motivated that person to prosecute him. And so now he's going to end up with, he faces a maximum penalty of 5 years. He's probably going to go do a year or two in some federal country club kind of prison. Incidentally, I've talked to many people who have been incarcerated in these federal minimum security prisons, and they tell me they're not nice places. No matter what we talk about, you know, outside, they say they're not very nice, and it's a low point in their life. But hopefully this guy will get it together. You know, there's that saying, you know, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. David Parker, he was exhibiting very hog-like behavior.
You should have filed something, buddy.
You really should have called me. I could have taken care of it. He definitely wouldn't be going to prison at this point, I don't think.
Don't lie to your attorney or the IRS agent. Wrong thing to do.
Yeah, lying to your attorney is just dumb, because we can handle pretty much any set of facts, but not as well if we get surprised. Yeah. You know, when it comes down.
So CNN had another one that says the Department of Justice closes an IRS investigation with no charges. What's up with that?
So I think I just alluded to that just like a couple of minutes ago, that the Justice Department doesn't seem to prosecute people anymore. But so do you remember the Lois Lerner thing? Well, I'll briefly talk about what was going on with Lois Lerner. She was an IRS employee, fairly high level, and she was in charge of the division of the IRS that took care of granting nonprofit status. Okay, and the nonprofits that we're talking about in this case are not the typical 501c3s. They're 501c4s, which are nonprofits that have to do with political fundraising. They've only been legal a few years as a result of a Supreme Court decision. And what happened is right before the 2012 election, presidential election, this ruling came down perhaps a year or two prior to that, and there was lots of Tea Party groups and conservative groups who were trying to set up these political nonprofits so that they could advance their agenda. Okay, and their agenda was to win the White House and help Mitt Romney win the White House. And what happened is the IRS, it took the IRS a very long time to approve these types of nonprofits, and many of them were ultimately approved, but they were approved well after the election. And there are some people who think that if these things had been approved, then the election consequences would have been different. And I don't know if that's the case or not, but it's really the appearance of impropriety that's the problem here. It's not whether impropriety occurred or not. It's the appearance that the IRS was being used as a political weapon by an administration to win elections and to keep their political opponents down. So there was this probe. The members of Congress did this probe, and they subpoenaed her, and she took the fifth, and she refused to testify about her activities and stuff. It's kind of funny. It was big in the news. She makes this big, long statement about how innocent she is, and then she takes the fifth, which she can't really do. But she did it, and and she got away with it. And So just this past Friday, the Justice Department notified Congress that it's closing the 2-year investigation into whether or not she improperly, or the IRS improperly, targeted the Tea Party and other conservative groups. And there's a great quote, and I love this because I'm a small government guy. The probe found, quote, substantial evidence of mismanagement, poor judgment, and institutional inertia leading to the belief by many tax-exempt applicants that the IRS targeted them based on their political viewpoints. But poor management is not a crime, close quote. So you have one party of the government pointing at the IRS, the Justice Department pointing at the IRS, saying, there's substantial evidence that they can't manage their way out of a paper bag. They exhibited extremely poor judgment, and there was this institutional inertia. Like, let's break that down. What does that mean? I think that means that there was direction from the top to slow walk these things through. That's what I think it says. And it's just sort of interesting that we've now just decided, the Justice Department has decided there's just not enough evidence that there was any crime. They just suck at their jobs, and so we just have to live with it.
It's a waste of time. We're just going to close it.
Yeah, fascinating. So who else? There's another person, and as much as I try not to make the show political, there's another person who's big in the news who had a bunch of emails that seem to get lost and found like on a regular basis. And I think that this is really the Justice Department telegraphing that there's nothing to come out of that either. It's just, sloppiness. You can have a server in your bedroom if you have national security secrets on your computer. It's no big deal.
There's a big delay, too, in the time you turn stuff over. That always helps.
So I just find it frustrating because I actually do believe in government to the extent that it has limited functions, and it should perform those functions very well. We should have a strong military. We should have we should have border controls. We should have a currency. We should have roads and bridges. We should have minimal laws that facilitate, interstate commerce, so that we can buy, a bottle of water that was filled in California where there's a drought or whatever. But, this telegraphs to us as citizens that there are two sets of rules going on here. There's rules for this David Parker dude in Virginia, who, if he doesn't pay his income tax, he's going to be looking at prison. And there's rules if you work for the government or you're part of the ruling class that don't apply to you. You're exempt because you have friends in high places. So I want to get to the train wreck of the week here today. We're running out of time. This is a pretty interesting story.
Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it.
Our producer, Jeff, is a little slow this morning. So anyway, it's a really interesting story. Very good client. I had he was my client for about 7 years, talking about how long some IRS cases can take to resolve. We resolved that one, and that's not the topic of the IRS train wreck of the week. He had a really good year, one of these most recent years, and his adjusted gross income was right around $1 million. It was good for him. I like seeing people succeed. It makes me happy. And he's a good guy, and he deserves that kind of money. So what happened is he actually filed, what was the problem? He filed his tax return a little bit late, and he didn't pay all of the taxes that he owed. And so what happened is he generated a penalty of it was right around $65,000. Using first-time penalty abatement rules, I was able to get that completely refunded to him. And he had $65,000 that he didn't have to pay to the IRS, and he was able to use on whatever he wanted. Hopefully it was to stimulate the economy in some kind of way.
If you have an IRS issue, a question, or a problem, just call 888-GET-MISH, and our host, Darrin Mish, will help you out. 888-GET-MISH. You can also hit him up on Twitter.
Facebook. You can hit me up on Twitter at Darrin_Mish. You can hit me up on Facebook, my name, or getirshelp.com.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back same time, same place next week. For this week, we're out.